This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Ash, and Team Valor. In a defensive turn, Seto asks Ishizu what exactly she's come to warn them about, his posture and general disposition making it clear that he is loath to trust someone bearing the Millennium symbol after all the trouble Pegasus gave them. However, it seems Ishizu is unperturbed by this hostility, instead pressing on as though he had said nothing at all, as she explains that a great evil has arisen which seeks Yugi's puzzle and the power of the Pharaoh, so it is up to them as the reincarnations of the Pharaoh and his court to stop this from occurring, lest the world fall into everlasting darkness. Furrowing his brow a little as he recalls Shadi also referencing some connection between himself and the Pharaoh, Seto questions what this has to do with him exactly, though this just earns him a slightly amused look from the stranger, as she states that she can explain, though it will mean coming with her, since as the age-old adage goes, seeing is believing. Having remained quiet up until this point, Yugi agrees, leaving Seto no choice but to follow, with them heading to the Domino Museum, which at this time of night has no one in it aside from themselves and some guards working for Ishizu. This too sets Seto's hackles to raising, though it seems Ishizu wishes them no ill will, as she simply bids them to follow her into the basement where a new exhibit on ancient Egypt is being displayed. Reaching the room in question, it does not take long to realize what the woman had been alluding to, as on the central tablet is displayed a figure who looks identical to Yugi, even wearing the Millennium Puzzle, while across from him, presumably locked in combat, is a man who both brothers have no trouble recognizing as Seto, or at least a version of him. Definitely on edge now, Seto demands Ishizu explain what's going on this instant, to which she replies that it is a battle between the nameless Pharaoh and his greatest rival, the priest Seto. However, here Yugi points out that there is an anachronism between the image and their current circumstances, as while Seto does use the blue eyes white dragon like the priest on the tablet, the dark magician, which the Pharaoh is using, is also in his brother's deck. This troubles Ishizu, since if this key detail regarding the Pharaoh's most trusted partner is different, then perhaps it is not the repeat of history she had hoped, meaning there is no guarantee the Pharaoh will defend the world from a great evil. Sharing her worry, Yugi asks what this great evil is exactly, having clocked a reference to it before, with Ishizu explaining that it is her brother Marek, as he wants to steal the Pharaoh's power, along with the 3 fabled Egyptian god cards, as these combined will give him unquestioned dominion over the earth. Looking between each other, the brothers admit they've never heard of these cards, with Ishizu replying that she doesn't imagine they would've, since Pegasus sealed them away when he could not control their terrible power, but they're the spirits of 3 great gods of Egypt, Slifer the Sky Dragon, Obelisk the Tormentor, and the strongest of all, the Winged Dragon of Ra. Presently, Marek and his followers the Rare Hunters are in possession of Slifer and Ra, though she was able to prevent them from stealing Obelisk, and so wishes to offer it to Yugi, since if he is able to gather all 3, he will be able to unlock the Pharaoh's lost memories. Taking the card gratefully, Yugi vows to do all he can to stop Marek, with Seto promising to back his little brother up all the way, a claim which makes Ishizu smile softly at this display of brotherly love, as she promises they will meet again, and when they do, she hopes it will be not only to save the world, but to save her brother from the darkness in his heart, since despite his evil deeds, she truly believes he can be redeemed. The next day after school, Yugi and Seto call all their friends to the game shop to discuss what Ishizu told them, with Taya and Tristan groaning that of course they had to get caught up in another wacko's plans for world domination, while Joey grins that it doesn't matter, since when the bad guys come a-knockin', he's gonna kick their keisters so hard they drop their god cards and go crying all the way home. However, it seems Joey is under a slight misapprehension as to who will be visiting whom, as on the TV, a news broadcast plays hosted by none other than Schroeder Corp CEO Siegfried von Schroeder, who announces that his company has created the next big step in the field of duel monsters, the Duel Disc, which he demonstrates, with acting like a portable duel box, albeit with life-sized monsters now. To celebrate this innovation, Schroeder Corp will be hosting a Duel Monsters tournament in Europe, which Siegfried has dubbed the War of the Roses, and which will include high-level competitors from around the world, such as the finalists from Duelist Kingdom and the Intercontinental Championship. Speaking of the latter tournament, as the person who beat him there, Seto can tell that something is different about Siegfried. He seems out of sorts in a way the brunette cannot quite put his finger on. All the same, having a hunch this might be the confrontation Ishizu was alluding to, he along with the others all agree to enter and win. As expected, a few days later Yugi, Joey and Seto all receive a package containing a duel disc of their own, a formal invitation to the War of the Roses tournament, including plane tickets to Europe, and a rulebook detailing what is different between this and Duelist Kingdom. Among the most notable changes is the fact that life points now start at 4,000, direct attacks are allowed, and any monster with a level above 4 requires tributes to summon, though there are also new rules for outside duels as well. Firstly, each duelist must ante their rarest card at the beginning of the game, though this is not the only thing they are betting, as each each duelist must also wager something called duel points, which are like the currency of this tournament, as admission to the finals will be given to the 8 duelists with the highest duel point totals at the end of the day of preliminaries. Most duelists will start the proceeding with only 1,000 duel points, though that is not the case for a few elite duelists who will receive a higher starting balance due to past achievements. These players have been dubbed bounty duelists, due to the fact that defeating them will yield the best results, though to make it fair, it is expected that when challenging a bounty duelist, one must offer a higher than normal ante to make up for the difference in what their target stands to gain. However, to ensure that the finalists aren't just the 8 with the highest starting duel points, each duel disc is equipped with a holographic map which will give all competitors real-time updates on the location of the top 8, meaning at any moment any competitor can track down and attempt to seize a spot in the top 8 if they're feeling bold. At that moment, Yugi, Joey, and Seto's duel discs all flare to life, displaying their current points and ranking. Unsurprisingly, Seto as the king of games is rank 1 with 5,000 points, while not too far behind him Yugi is rank 2 with 4,500. As for Joey, he is rank 5 with 3,000, a fact which fills him with a certain kind of rage, as he yells that he was a Duelist Kingdom semi-finalist, so he deserves more respect than this. Though as Yugi is quick to point out, he's still in the top 8, so as long as he doesn't lose any duels, he's got a good chance of making it to the finals, with this turning the blonde's mood around as he grins that Yugi's right. However, despite his hopeful words, Yugi has a bad feeling about this bounty system, as by giving he and his friends such high values right off the bat, Siegfried has put targets on their backs in a way that he can't help but suspect is intentional, while also ensuring any potential enemies know where they are at any given moment. Nonetheless, recognizing there's nothing he can do about it, Yugi along with Seto and Joey spend the next week hard at work upgrading their decks to best suit this new tournament format, which in Seto's case means one notable downgrade, as he is forced to remove Exodia from his deck due to it being on Siegfried's ban list. Meanwhile, outside the realm of dueling, Joey has one other important matter to attend to, that being supporting Serenity through her eye operation. Thanks to not having red eyes, no one attempts to stop him from reaching the hospital, meaning this goes off without a hitch, as does Serenity's recovery, so when the date of their flight rolls around, she joins her brother, the Muto boys, and Taya, Tristan, and Bakura as they board the Schroeder Corp plane bound for Europe. Here they spot several familiar faces, including Rex Raptor and Weevil Underwood, though not wanting to be disqualified for fighting before the tournament even begins, no one causes a fuss. Touching down in Germany, the participants are then shown to their accommodations, a ritzy hotel where they are told to rest up, as at 9 AM sharp tomorrow, the tournament begins, and the entire city is their arena. While Joey and Tristan are keen to raid the minibar, Seto insists they all gather for a meeting first to discuss their plan of action for tomorrow. A little perplexed, Mokuba asks what his big bro means, to which Yugi answers, saying that he and Seto figured they should all split up, since having 3 bounty duelists together would only attract trouble, so it's for the best if they all keep their distance from each other until the finals. Noting their understanding, the non-duelists of the group then discuss who will accompany who, since they want to make sure each of their friends has at least someone cheering them on and watching their back in case Marek and his Rare Hunter Goon Squad come looking for them. Ultimately, it's decided that Serenity, Taya, and Tristan will go with Joey, Mokuba will accompany Seto, and Bakura will tag along with Yugi, since it's in the Muto brothers' best interest that they don't draw attention to themselves by traveling with multiple people. With this figured out, the group then all wish each other luck and go their separate ways, promising to meet up tomorrow evening in the finals. Wanting to draw some heat away from Yugi and Joey, Seto and Mokuba leave first thing in the morning, having deduced that housing them all in one spot is an attempt by Siegfried to turn the hotel into something of a culling field by making it too good a target for the greedy and unworthy to resist, so they can be knocked out first. However, it seems that even this early start is not enough to hide Seto from view, as the moment the fireworks burst in the sky signaling the start of the tournament, a man steps out of an alley and challenges Seto to duel. Remembering that one of the rules is that no challenge can be refused so long as both participants have duel points to wager, Seto agrees, eyeing the man up. He is gaunt and angular, with grey hair and a look in his eyes that the brunette doesn't like, though it does not take him long to figure out why, as the man introduces himself as Seeker and claims that he will win Seto's Blue Eyes White Dragon for his master Marek. Though instead of scaring the boy, this only makes him grin, as he replies that this is a win-win for him, as now he gets a warm-up, and by knocking Seeker out of the tournament, that's one less Rare Hunter creep threatening his little brother. He then announces his intention to take the first move, and as his duel disc flashes to life with his duel point total being replaced by his life point counter, he summons one of the new monsters he acquired in preparation for the tournament, the fearsome X-Head Cannon in attack mode. In response, Seeker plays one face down before summoning his gear golem the Moving Fortress in defense mode, stating that with its whopping 2200 defense points, it's too great a wall for even the King of Games to scale. However, remaining unfazed by Seeker's posturing, Seto refutes this by playing his Z Metal Tank, which combines with his X-Head Cannon to make his XZ Tank Cannon, a monster with 2400 attack that promptly destroys the golem, though Seeker's life points are undamaged. Despite this setback, Seeker is pleased as it lets him activate his trap Jar of Greed, allowing him to draw a card before laying a monster in face-down defense position and ending his turn. Back with Seto, he starts things off by playing an old favorite, his Komori Dragon, who attacks and destroys Seeker's face-down skull angle, triggering its effect and allowing Seeker to draw again, though Seto isn't overly concerned, as he next has XZ Tank Cannon attack the man's life points directly, dropping him straight to 1600. In a cool tone, the brunette then offers Seeker a chance to walk away with his pride, since next turn he's going to wipe out his life points and win this duel. Though sneeringly, the Rare Hunter retorts that life points are immaterial in this particular duel. At once, Seeker's plays up until now all make sense, as he declares the man must be going for Exodia, to which Seeker nods, stating that Master Marek's reports on his intelligence are right. Looking annoyed, Seto states that Exodia isn't allowed in this tournament, so Seeker should be disqualified, though this doesn't seem to bother the grey-haired man, as he enigmatically replies that he and his allies have methods of avoiding disqualification. Not that Seto should be worrying about such things, since as it stands, he has 3 pieces of Exodia, and it won't be long before he gets the final 2 pieces and knocks the boy out of the tournament. To prove this point, his first action when his turn begins to play Graceful Charity, drawing 3 cards and discarding 2 from his hand, with him smirking that he's just drawn the penultimate Exodia piece, and more than that, he's gained a card which will ensure he gets the final one very soon. As it turns out, this is Witch of the Black Forest, who he plays in face-up defense, revealing that once she's sent to the graveyard, he can add the final Exodia piece to his hand from anywhere in his deck. So, what's Seto gonna do when he can't destroy his monster? At last, Seto's confidence begins to waver, as he switches all his monsters to defense mode through Gritted Teeth, since that way Seeker can't crash his Witch into them to activate its effect, a move the Rare Hunter calls very clever, stating that he will be sure to use that trick against his next prey, just as he will be sure to use the boy's precious blue eyes to take the Millennium Puzzle from his little brother. As one, Seto and Mokuba both order this creep to leave Yugi alone. Though smirking devilishly, Seeker taunts they shouldn't bother trying to save him when they can't even save themselves. He then begins his turn by summoning Mystic Tomato, having it destroy Komori Dragon, while warning that any plans Seto might have about stalling him won't help, since the clock favors him, so sooner or later, he will draw Exodia and end this hunt. Trying to remain calm for Mokuba's sake, Seto retorts the odds of drawing 1 card in 40 isn't as sure an outcome as Seeker's claiming, though with a cackle, the grey-haired man sneers that he actually has 3 copies of each Exodia piece, so the odds are rather good, and that's assuming Seto doesn't just hand him the win by destroying his witch. In spite of himself, this revelation does cause Seto to sweat, and as he draws, his heart sinks a bit further, as he has got an enemy controller, a card he can't see much use for in this situation, since even if he switched the Witch of the Black Forest into attack mode and destroyed it with his XC tank cannon, the damage wouldn't be enough to win the duel. For that, he'd need the final piece of the Union monster, Y Dragonhead, but like he told Seeker, drawing 1 specific card from among his entire deck is a long shot. Seeing no other option, Seto ends his turn here, with Seeker doing likewise after drawing and getting a duplicate Exodia piece, though by using his X-ray contact lenses, he sees the final piece is on top of his deck, meaning next turn he wins, a fact he taunts Seto with, telling him to draw his last pathetic card so he can end this duel. Scowling now, Seto retorts that his deck has no pathetic cards, and so renewing his faith in the heart of the cards, he draws, knowing that if he doesn't get just the card he needs, he'll be knocked out of the tournament and lose his grandpa's blue eyes. But worse even than that, he won't be able to keep his promise to Yugi. Barely daring to hope, the young brunette then looks down at the card in his hand, with his heart skipping a beat as he spots a red metallic dragon staring back up at him. He then commands his XZ tank cannon to split apart and reform into XYZ dragon cannon as he lays down his final card and watches his newest boss monster burst into life. Still confident in his victory, Seeker jeers that it is a good play, but too little too late, that its attack is too low to wipe out his life points even if he destroys Mystic Tomato. However, smirking now, Seto retorts that he's not aiming for that oversized piece of fruit, as he activates his enemy controller, paying 1000 life points to force the Witch of the Black Forest into attack mode. At once, Seeker realizes what is about to happen, and begins shrieking at Seto to stop, though it is already too late, as with a cannon firestorm attack, XYZ Dragon Cannon wipes out the Witch, and with it the rest of Seeker's life points, ending the duel before its effect can activate. As soon as Seeker's life points hit 0, Seto sees his duel point counter rise to 6000, as he acquires all of Seeker's points, though it seems the man isn't thinking about scores right now, as he falls to his knees and begs Marek for forgiveness. Whipping his head around to try and find where Marek might be, he is instead shocked when the Millennium symbol glows on Seeker's forehead, and Marek begins speaking through him. In a menacing voice, the leader of the Rare Hunters warns Seto that Yugi isn't his only grudge, as he has reason to destroy the brunette too, so both brothers should watch out, as his minions have already turned this city into their hunting ground, in ways the boys cannot even imagine. Furiously, Seto calls Marek a coward, ordering him to come out and duel him in person rather than relying on flunkies, though this just makes the villain laugh, as he declares that they will duel in due time, though for now, he has other plans. seconds. Then, without another word, the connection breaks, causing Seeker's body to spasm and collapse, completely devoid of life. Meanwhile, having heard the commotion going on above and below them as the duels had begun in earnest, Yugi and Bakura had snuck out of the hotel through the fire escape at the white-haired boy's suggestion, with this allowing them to get some distance between themselves and their accommodation as they planned their next move and watch out for rare hunters. As they walk, Yugi can't help but stare at Obelisk the Tormentor, wondering what Ishizu had meant about the god card's terrible power, though when he turns back to ask Bakura what he thinks, the other boy is nowhere to be seen. Worrying that he might have been attacked by rare hunters, Yugi calls out for his friend and rushes back the way they came until he spots him in a gloomy side street. Letting out a sigh of relief, the boy with the tritone hair jogs over to Bakura, chiding him not to scare him like that, though when the other boy turns back to face him, his expression is far from remorseful. In fact, it carries a dark amusement that almost makes Yugi recoil. Stepping in to close the distance between them, Bakura grabs hold of the Millennium Puzzle and stares intently at it, as he muses that it is quite the powerful magical object. Something about the way he says this makes Yugi's skin crawl, and as he looks closer, he realizes the Millennium Ring has appeared on Bakura's chest when it was not there before. Though, that is not the only new addition, as on his wrist hangs a duel disc that he was definitely not issued, with Yugi demanding to know what is going on here, as he yanks his puzzle from the other's grasp and backs away. Face twisting into a sinister leer, Yami Bakura answers that he supposes little Yugi would not remember him, but he is a spirit just like the one who dwells in the Millennium Puzzle, though while Yugi's partner is a king, he is but a thief hunting the 7 Millennium items, and now that the protection cast by the boy's brothers is not an issue, he is going to claim his puzzle in a shadow game. Angrily, Yugi orders the stranger to release Bakura, to which the thief agrees, assuming he can defeat him, with this being all the middle Muto brother needs to hear as he opens himself up to the pharaoh and announces that it's time to duel. Cackling darkly, the spirit of the ring greets his old foe with a sneer, stating that it seems he and little Yugi have something in common as they both do not remember him, though that matters very little, as they will have all eternity to rack their brains when they're trapped in the Shadow Realm. Letting out a snarl, Yugi retorts that it is this interloper in Bakura's body who will be banished to the shadows. Though still sneering, the villain simply replies that they will have to wait and see, as their surroundings change to that of the Shadow Realm. Like the thief he is, Yami Bakura takes the first move, playing a face-down spell or trap and activating his Dark Door, with this making it that each duelist can only attack with one monster per turn. However, this is not all he does, as he also plays his Doom Caliber Knight in attack mode, with its 1900 attack being a considerable threat, though not one that can be used at the moment, with the white-haired fiend being forced to end his turn here. Recognizing the dangerous skilled user of shadow magic poses, Yugi decides to start off cautiously, summoning Big Shield Gardener in defense mode before ending his turn. Evidently disappointed by this strategy, Bakura summons his Necro Jar in attack mode, with its mere 1100 attack points seeming rather paltry, to the point where Yugi suspects its summoning to be a trap. However, since he cannot win this duel through inaction, he has no choice but to spring the trap, and so calling forth his Dawn Knight, he tells it to attack Necro Jar. Unfortunately, this is just what Bakura wants, as he reveals his face-down card, Dark Spirit of the Silent, with allowing him to cancel Dawn Knight's attack and designate a different one of Yugi's monsters to enter the fray in its stead. At once, Big Shield Gardener rises to its feet, having been forcibly switched to attack mode, and though Yugi cries for it to stop, the warrior seems possessed, as it charges Doom Caliber and is cut down, dropping Yugi to 2200 life points. However, it seems that the terror is not over yet, as when Bakura starts his own turn, he has Doom Caliber destroy Dawn Knight, then more shockingly, has Necro Jar attack Yugi directly, leaving him with only 600 life points. In a turn of bafflement, Yugi questions how this is possible, when Bakura's own Dark Door limits them each to one attack a turn. Though smirking, Bakura reveals that Necro Jar is unaffected by spells, meaning it alone can provide him with a second attack. This leaves the young man with tritoned hair rather rattled, then knowing the fate of the world depends on him keeping his head, he draws and summons Magician's Valkyria, which he equips with one of his new spell cards, Magic Formula, boosting her attack to 2200 and allowing Yugi to destroy Necro Jar, leaving Bakura with only 2900 life points. Unfortunately, Bakura is not as dismayed by this outcome as Yugi might hope, as with a malevolent grin, he sacrifices his Doom Caliber Knight to bring forth his Earl of Demise for activating Heavy Storm, with this allowing him to destroy both Dark Door and Valkyria's Magic Formula, thus making her weak enough for the Earl to destroy, and Yugi to be left with only 200 life points. Though this is not the end of Bakura's grand play, as with a devious smirk he lays 2 cards face down, forcing Yugi to assume they must be important if Bakura waited until after clearing the board of spells and traps to play them. To this end, he plays a face down of his own, as well as setting King's Knight in face down defense mode, since while it is not strong enough to destroy the Earl of Demise, it can at least protect his small supply of life points. Smirking at Yugi's evident discomfort, Bakura questions if this is all the fabled pharaoh can do, while leering that it seems as though he has lost his touch, a claim Yugi has no choice but to take, as his King's Knight is destroyed by Bakura's fiend, as are his Dark Mimic level 1 next turn and Apprentice Magician the turn after, though this does allow you to activate the latter pair's effects, first drawing none other than his Egyptian God card, and second summoning his Old Vindictive Magician from his deck in face down defense mode. This thankfully makes all the difference, as when Yugi's turn rolls around again, he is quick to flip his Magician face up, with this forcing the Earl of Demise into the graveyard thanks to its effect. However, this is not the end of the hero's comeback, as he next summons Breaker the Magical Warrior, who goes to attack Bakura's life points, in what will surely be a devastating blow. At least, that is what he thinks until the Malefic Spirit reveals the first of his important face downs, that being Shallow Grave, which lets him bring back Doom Caliber in defense mode, though at the cost of letting Yugi summon a defense position monster from his graveyard as well, with him choosing Valkyria. Thanks to Doom Caliber's re-emergence, Bakura's life points are spared as the Zombie Knight is destroyed in its place, though his field will not be bare for long, as on his next turn, Bakura draws and activates Monster Reborn, with this allowing him to resurrect his Earl of Demise and sick it on Breaker, destroying the Magical Warrior, and putting Yugi on 100 life points. However, thanks to Bakura's play, when Yugi's turn begins, he is able to activate his own face down, with it being none other than Double Spell, allowing him to use the same spell Bakura did last turn. As a result, King's Knight soon finds itself back on the field, though it is not there long, as using his newly drawn face card fusion, Yugi is able to fuse the Knight on his field with one in his hand and another in his deck, to make Arcana Knight Joker. With a whopping 3800 attack, Joker has more than enough firepower to destroy the Earl of Demise, though this is not where Yugi's ambitions end, as switching Valkyria to attack mode, he prepares to go for game. However, it seems Bakura is not yet out of tricks, as with a triumphant laugh, the villainous Spectre reveals his final face down card, Defusion. As intended, this forces Joker back into its 3 knightly parts, cancelling the attack while Bakura taunts that he watched Yugi in Duelist Kingdom, so naturally he had a plan in place in case the boy tried to defeat him the same way he beat Keith. Now all that's left is for Yugi to end his turn, so he can wipe out one of his knights and the rest of his life points. Though here Yugi disagrees, as he retorts that this hasn't stopped him, but instead given him the means to summon an even more destructive monster, a claim he proves true as he tributes his 3 knights to bring out Obelisk the Tormentor. Now at last Bakura's arrogance begins to slip, showing something like fear, while in turn, there is a glint of familiarity in Obelisk's red eyes as he regards the thief. Then, on Yugi's cry, the Egyptian God card reveals its effect, consuming Valkyria and Old Vindictive Magician in exchange for infinite attack points, and the ability to strike at Bakura despite the battle phase having ended. Against such divinity, a mere Earl is no match, and as it vanishes in a wisp of darkness along with the rest of Bakura's life points, Yugi orders the Spirit of the Ring to be gone. As if on command, the shadows of this realm then reach out and wrap around Bakura, pulling him into the darkness, though as he vanishes into the void, the spirit reflects on how victory in this duel was merely one of many paths he charted to his ultimate goal, while at that moment, the piece of the Millennium Puzzle he had laid his hand on earlier briefly flashes. However, this is completely lost on Yugi, since as soon as the Shadow Realm fades back into the side street, he reverts to his regular self and rushes to check on Bakura. What he finds sends a shiver down his spine, as despite the monster being a hologram, it seems that Obelisk's Fist of Fate has done very real injury to the white-haired boy, and as he looks down at the card atop his duel disc, he at last understands what Ishizu had meant about its terrible power, and more importantly, that he must not use it again unless it is absolutely necessary. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.